And that's the extent of it, right? That's where this brutalizing force begins. This is, according to Gasset, prima facie, the foundational account of how we arise at a political situation wherein all that is political is violent, right? And obviously, there is no greater instantiation of the violent political state than the genocidal state. So not only does this obviously apply to Nazi Germany, which unfolded only a matter of decades from Gasset's time writing this, but it unfolds and it applies now to contemporary 21st century accounts of sort of genocide and an analysis of genocide studies, right? Because those in power view outsiders who do not ascribe to the same ideas that I have as a threat. And in order to combat that threat, I need to annihilate those who have that, because I cannot logically, and I recognize this, incorporate their ideas into my ideas of perfection. So the only way to do this is to suppress them through forced emigration or death, or the attempt to manipulate birth and so on and so forth. All the different things sort of discussed in sort of a contemporary understanding of genocide. So for Gasset to have illustrated this point, pre-Nazi Germany, I think is profound, to say the least, and prophetical for certain. Okay, so we recognize what he means by vulgarity now. He, the masked man, attempts to make vulgarity a right. The question is, why does the masked man attempt to make vulgarity a right? The answer is, he makes it a right because he refuses to appeal to any authority outside of himself. The masked man will not appeal to the authority of the other. Therefore, in a refusal to appeal to the authority of another, the masked man says, I have the right now, since you refuse to accept my ideas, to basically exterminate you. So you can either conform to my ideas or you can die. That's the option. And when presented with that option, the vast majority of people will conform to my ideas. However, some people will not conform, will refuse to conform because of principle, and all I do is I exterminate those people, right? So it sounds simple, and I don't mean to trivialize in any sense the vulgarity of the situation, but that's how it unfolds, according to Gasset. And I agree with him. I think he's right on the money. All right. He then says, the masked man is incapable of listening and only seeks to impose his opinion. And Gasset says the following: why should the masked man listen? Why should he listen if he has within him all that is necessary? He's perfect, right? He has within him everything that's necessary, so why should I listen to anybody else? You can't tell me anything I don't already know. Hubris, pride, vanity. There is no reason now for listening, but rather for judging, pronouncing, deciding. There is no question concerning public life in which he does not intervene, blind and deaf as he is, imposing his opinions. The masked man then functions within political life as a source of imposition. The relationship between the masked man and that of the other is that the masked man views himself as being threatened by the other and uses his vulgarity, which he is now subsumed to a right. Rights, R-I-G-H, rights, to be vulgar. He's taken this right to be vulgar and used that against this potential threat. You're a threat to me. I'm going to appeal to the only thing that I know how to appeal to, vulgarity. And vulgarity informs me at that point that, hey, Jason, look, this guy's a threat to you. Try and get him to conform to your ideas. So I tell this person, you need to conform to my ideas. He says, I refuse to conform to your ideas. I then make an appeal to vulgarity and says, this other refuses to conform to my ideas. And the only thing that vulgarity can tell me to do is to exterminate him, right? To kill him. And that's what ends up happening, right? Violence becomes a consequence of a refusal to make an appeal outside of my own authority. I'll say that again, right? I'll make even the stricter claim, right? And this is not necessarily Gasset, this is my interpretation of Gasset, is that violence becomes necessary when those in political power refuse to make an appeal outside of their own power, right? So violence becomes necessary when those in political power refuse to make an appeal outside of their own political power, outside of their own power. Why is that the case? Well, I mean, that's prima facie the definition of fascism, right? The fascist state is the state wherein there is no power to be subordinated to, right? It is the power of the state as such. When that state is manifest, there is no appeal to some other state, right? Either internally or externally, right? There is no appeal to opposition, to opposing parties, to opposing factions. There are no opposing factions. All that exists is the power of the state, and that power is totalizing, hence it's totalitarian, to be technical. And this is the dilemma that Gasset is attempting to articulate theoretically. And I think it's a fabulously complicated idea to wrap your mind around, but I think Gasset does it very, very skillfully, very, very carefully, because he recognizes, and I think this is the key. I don't think this is, according, my interpretation is, at least, this is the key to chapter 8, to understanding chapter 8, is that violence is a necessary consequence out of sort of pride, right? The inability, the lack, the unwillingness, just the audacity to say that I refuse, under any circumstances, to make appeals beyond my own power. The only way that you can resolve any conflict that would arise in that, it can't be reasoned, because you can't reason with the person. If a person refuses to accept what I say is truth, well, normally what would happen is I'd make appeals to other things to try and bring this person in, to try and make this person understand my point of view. But the totalitarian, the fascist, the masked man, this person cannot make any appeals, because that would subordinate my power to some other power, right? Because in making an appeal, I'm trying to say, well, look, here's another authority that you can believe in. You might not want to take my word for it, but take his word for it. And that's exactly what the masked man refuses to do, right? There is no second party here. There's only my party. There's only me and my ideas, and you and your ideas. There is nothing else. It's me and mine and you and yours. It's us and y'all, right? It's we and they. It's I, it's you. So this relationship is fundamentally an antithetical relationship, and I think ingeniously Gasset characterizes it simply. And what he does is he immediately makes this relationship political. So how is it that we get around this, right? What is it that we do in order to navigate within such a hostile environment, right? Now, violence hasn't erupted as yet, but you can see that all of the preconditions are there for there to be brutality, right? And Gasset's account, I would argue, is an amazing account, is an excellent account for contemporary investigations into political violence, right? I think Gasset has basically laid the foundation for an understanding for political violence in a contemporary sense. And personally, in my own research now, I incorporate quite a bit of Gasset's ideas of violence into my contemporary account of political violence and genocide and so on and so forth. Okay, Gasset then makes the claim, now that we understand sort of this refusal to listen, this refusal to appeal to authority necessitates violence. Gasset says, roughly, civilization is fundamentally buttressed on an appeal to authority, right? To be civilized is to make an appeal to authority. So this inability to make an appeal is the opposite of civility, which is barbarism. So let's see what Gasset says with respect to that.